people might say, no, this is not true. The British India Act was there, but we have a new constitution that the court started in, promulgated, and we became a republic in 1950 after the constitution was accepted and so on and so forth. So now we have to look at the history of this constitution. Where is this constitution coming from? So if we look at it, who is actually the framer of the constitution? If you ask any child in India, say who created the constitution, what is the answer? Ambedkar. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee. But the most of the work was actually done by this one person, and his person's name also again we don't even know recently, but his name is Sir Benegal Narsingh Rao. He is actually the drafter of the Indian Constitution. What does that mean? That means that he is actually the one that he had been in the ICS, he had been an employee of the British government for a long time, and he was the one who actually prepared the entire draft document, which was the constitution. All the drafting committee did some comments, made some changes, suggestions, then there was a constitutional assembly, but he, I would say, is really the writer of the Indian constitution. He was later on honoured also. So who is he? He is an ICS. He was ordered the companion of the Order of the Indian Empire. He was knighted in 1938. Why is somebody knighted? Because of loyalty to the British crown. And then of course he became the constitutional advisor in 46, and then in 48 he prepared the initial draft. In fact, he is the one who travelled to different countries, including US and other countries, to look at their constitutions and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I would say that for all practical purposes, he is the drafter of the Indian Constitution. And then of course other people gave their inputs and so on and so forth. What does he use? Again, the template, he is a long loyal servant of the British Empire, and the template mainly comes from the British India Act, which is what he uses as the core template, which is, by the way, the British India Act is the biggest act that the British Parliament has ever passed till that date. It is a 4,000 pages act, which pretty much like governs every single thing about India. 1935, yeah. Did I say, yeah, 1935, the British India Act of 1935 is the longest act passed by the British Parliament. So
that was meant for their golden sparrow, so it had to be longer.
Yes, because if some master is going to figure out how to manage the servants, then a lot of regulation is not needed. If you compare with the US Constitution is a very small, tiny booklet. Okay. Because the power more or less is vested in the people, right? You don't need a big framework of somebody telling you what to do if the people are considered moral and intelligent enough to figure it out for themselves, right? All you need is some guidelines. But when you are in a civilizing mission, then you need to specify everything as much as possible. So this Benegal Narasimha Rao actually framed it, and then there is another quote that you might be familiar with, who is saying, I am quite prepared to say I shall be the first person to burn it out and do not want it. It does not suit anybody. This is a quote about the constitution by another well-known figure. So of course, I think to be fair, we have to look at that in a little bit of a nuance. He's talking about a particular, in a particular context he's speaking about that, and later also. But in any case, there's a few things to also remember about the constitution. Is firstly, the framer or the drafter of it is Sir Benegal Rao. Secondly, the Constituent Assembly itself is not a body which is elected in independent India. Right? The Constitution Assembly itself comes from an election that is happening pre-British India in terms of who were the representatives, and then after partition they kind of sorted them out and say, ye representative India ke ho gaye, ye Pakistan ke ho gaye. So the Constituent Assembly itself is a colonial institution coming from pre-partition India. The drafter is clearly taking on the Colonial Act. But then we start with, and of course the Constitution is never ratified by the people of free India. Right? There is no referendum on the Constitution that says, do you ratify, do you, the people of India, agree that this constitution shall happen? Again, as I said, it's not by elected people of Free India either. But we start with we, the people of India. Now, how did we, the people of India, come in this matter? It has nothing to do with the people of India. We should say, we, the colonized elite who have been hereby subservient to the British Empire, now, now deemed to put this structure on the Indian people. I mean, that would be a fair and honest preamble to the constitution. But that's not now how it is. So now,
होना चाहिए या नहीं डेमोक्रेटिक प्रिंसिपल से होना चाहिए कुछ नहीं तो पार्लियामेंट के फर्स्ट सेशन में पास होना चाहिए दैट वाज द मिनिमम दैट्स नॉट द अल्टीमेट दैट वाज द मिनिमम दैट डिड नॉट हैपन
it's actually a good question. There are long different histories are there in terms of ratification of the constitution. For instance, in I think in Brazil there was an entire referendum for that. In the United States, it was ratified. See, one of the other things is a very strange thing happens in India. The Constituent Assembly actually makes the constitution and it also ratifies the constitution. Right? It is like saying कि होमवर्क दिया है किसी को, है ना, जो जिसने होमवर्क किया है वही उसको मार्क ग्रेड भी करेगा. So in the US what happens is that the framers of the constitution framed it, but then it had to be ratified by each of the states. Right? So each of the states, so the framers and the people who are ratifying it are different. That means there is some check on the people who are framing it because somebody else is going to ratify it. So you have to make sure it's going to be acceptable to those who are going to ratify it. Right? So this process never happens in India because those two entities are the same, the people who are doing it.